The stadium lights felt like spotlights, burning into Mark's skin. He stood frozen, the tennis racket heavy in his hand, the cheers of the crowd a distant roar. The scoreboard glared, 6-0, 6-1. His opponent, David, was already shaking hands with the referee, a smug grin plastered across his face. Mark wanted to disappear. Every missed shot, every double fault, replayed in his mind like a broken record. He'd choked. He'd completely fallen apart on the biggest stage of his high school career, the state finals. It wasn't just losing, it was the way he lost. He hadn't just been defeated, he'd been humiliated. David, a player he'd beaten comfortably in the past, had toyed with him, effortlessly returning every serve, anticipating every move. Mark had felt slow, clumsy, and utterly helpless. He could hear whispers from the stands. Some were sympathetic, but others were cruel. "What a choke artist," someone yelled. Mark flinched. He knew his parents were in the crowd, his little sister, Lily, too. He imagined their faces, the mixture of disappointment and concern. He didn't dare look up. The trophy presentation was a blur. David hoisted the gleaming silver cup, basking in the applause. Mark stood on the sidelines, a runner-up medal dangling from his neck, feeling like a complete failure. He wanted to rip the medal off, to throw his racket into the stands, to run away and never play tennis again. As David gave his victory speech, thanking his coach, his family, and even Mark for being such a worthy opponent, the insincerity stung. Mark felt a lump forming in his throat. Tears welled up in his eyes, blurring his vision. He blinked them back furiously. He wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. The walk back to the locker room was the longest of his life. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The weight of the loss, the sting of the humiliation, pressed down on him, threatening to crush him. He felt like he had let everyone down, his team, his family, and most of all, himself. He sat alone in the locker room, the silence amplifying his misery. The cheers had faded, replaced by the dull thrum of the stadium's ventilation system. He stared at his worn-out tennis shoes, the laces untied, a symbol of his unraveling. He wasn't sure he could ever face a tennis court again. The dream of playing college tennis, the years of hard work, all seemed pointless now. The crushing defeat had left him broken, defeated, and utterly humiliated. The taste of failure was bitter, and it lingered on his tongue. The locker room felt colder than usual. Mark sat hunched over on the bench, his head in his hands. He couldn't shake the image of David's triumphant grin. Each point David scored replayed in his mind, a constant reminder of his inadequacy. Quitting. The word echoed in his head. It seemed like the only logical solution. Why put himself through this again? The pressure, the disappointment, the sheer humiliation, it was too much to bear. He imagined a life without tennis, a life without the constant need to prove himself. Maybe he could focus on school, hang out with his friends, just be a normal teenager. He pictured telling his parents. He knew they'd be disappointed. They'd invested so much time and money in his tennis career. But maybe they'd understand. Maybe they'd see how much pain he was in. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He almost texted his coach, Mr. Thompson, but stopped himself. What could he say? I quit. It felt too final, too irreversible. He shoved the phone back into his pocket. He thought about Lily. She always looked up to him, bragging to her friends about her tennis star brother. How could he tell her he was giving up? He imagined the disappointment in her eyes, the hero worship replaced by pity. He kicked at a loose pebble on the floor. He'd been playing tennis since he was 7 years old. It was a part of him, a part of his identity. But was it worth it? Was chasing this dream worth the constant pressure and the risk of failure? He remembered the feeling of hitting a perfect shot, the satisfying thwack of the racket, the thrill of winning a tough match. He remembered the camaraderie of his teammates, the support of his coach. But those memories were overshadowed by the crushing weight of his recent defeat. He stood up, grabbed his bag, and walked out of the locker room, leaving his racket behind. It felt symbolic, a severing of ties. He walked through the empty hallways, the silence broken only by the echo of his footsteps. He felt numb, detached from everything around him. He reached the parking lot and saw his parents' car. He hesitated, unsure of what to say. He knew they would ask about the match, and he wasn't ready to relive the nightmare. He took a deep breath and forced a smile. He had a plan. He would tell them he was tired, that he needed a break. He wouldn't mention quitting, not yet. He just needed time to process everything, to decide what he really wanted. But deep down, a part of him knew that he was teetering on the edge, ready to walk away from the sport that had defined his life for so long. The humiliation had planted a seed of doubt, and it was growing rapidly. The break lasted a week. Mark spent most of his time in his room, avoiding the tennis court and his racket. He watched TV, played video games, and generally tried to distract himself from the gaping hole in his life that tennis used to fill. One afternoon, Mr. Thompson, his coach, showed up at his doorstep. Mark felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He hadn't returned any of Mr. Thompson's calls or texts. "Hey, Mark," Mr. Thompson said, his voice gentle but firm. "Mind if I come in?" Mark reluctantly nodded and led him inside. They sat in the living room, an awkward silence hanging in the air. "I know things didn't go as planned last week," Mr. Thompson began, "but I also know you're a fighter, Mark. You've got more grit than anyone I know." Mark shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I don't know, Mr. Thompson. I choked. I embarrassed myself. Everyone has bad days, Mark. Even the best players in the world. The difference is how you respond to those days. You can let it define you, or you can use it to make you stronger." Mr. Thompson leaned forward. "Look, I've seen you play, Mark. I know what you're capable of. You've got talent, you've got heart, and you've got the potential to be a great player. Don't let one bad match take that away from you." He paused, then added, "That loss, it doesn't have to be the end of your story, Mark. It can be the beginning of a new one. A story about resilience, about overcoming adversity, about coming back stronger than ever." Later that evening, Mark's dad sat down with him at the dinner table. "Your mom and I are proud of you, Mark, no matter what. We know how hard you worked to get to the finals. Losing doesn't change that." Lily chimed in, "Yeah, Mark. You're still the best tennis player ever." Mark smiled weakly. He knew they meant well, but he still felt the sting of the defeat. His dad continued, "Sometimes, Mark, the biggest setbacks can lead to the greatest comebacks. It's all about how you choose to look at it. Use this as fuel, Mark. Let it drive you to work harder, to improve, to prove everyone wrong." That night, Mark lay in bed, tossing and turning. He thought about Mr. Thompson's words, his dad's encouragement, Lily's unwavering faith. He realized they were right. He couldn't let one loss define him. He had to get back on the court, to face his fears, to prove to himself and everyone else that he was capable of more. The fire wasn't completely extinguished, a small ember still glowed within him. He decided to fan it back into a flame. He would use the humiliation as fuel. He would train harder than ever before. He would come back stronger. The decision was made. He would not quit. The next year was a blur of sweat, exhaustion, and unwavering determination. Mark dedicated himself to transforming his game, pushing himself harder than he ever had before. Early mornings became his new normal. Before the sun even peeked over the horizon, Mark was on the court, practicing his serves. Hundreds of balls soared through the air, each one aimed at a specific spot on the service box. He focused on power, accuracy, and consistency, determined to eliminate the double faults that had plagued him in the finals. After school, it was back to the court for hours of grueling drills. Mr. Thompson put him through a rigorous regimen, focusing on his weaknesses. His backhand, once a liability, became a weapon. He worked on his footwork, improving his speed and agility. He practiced his volleys, becoming more aggressive at the net. Weekends were spent at the gym, building strength and endurance. He lifted weights, ran sprints, and worked on his core stability. He knew that physical fitness was just as important as skill. He even changed his diet, cutting out junk food and focusing on healthy, nutritious meals. He fueled his body with the right foods, giving himself the energy he needed to train at peak performance. The montage would show Mark diving for a ball, his body covered in clay dust. Mark grimacing as he lifted a heavy weight. Mark running wind sprints until his lungs burned. Mark practicing his serve in the pouring rain. Mark studying videos of professional tennis players, analyzing their techniques. Mr. Thompson offering words of encouragement and guidance. Slowly but surely, Mark began to see improvements. His serves became more powerful and consistent. His backhand became more reliable. His footwork became quicker and more agile. He was transforming himself into a completely different player. He started playing practice matches against stronger opponents, testing his skills and pushing his limits. He lost some of those matches, but he learned from each defeat. He analyzed his mistakes, identified his weaknesses, and worked to correct them. He visualized success, imagining himself playing in the finals again, but this time, with a different outcome. He pictured himself hitting winning shots, dominating his opponent, and raising the trophy in victory. The humiliation of last year's defeat still lingered, but it no longer haunted him. Instead, it fueled him, driving him to work harder, to push himself further, to become the best player he could be. The year of intense training was transforming not only his game but also his mindset. He was becoming more confident, more resilient, and more determined than ever before. He was ready for redemption. Despite his improved skills and unwavering dedication, Mark soon faced another hurdle: rejection. He started applying for prestigious summer training programs, hoping to further refine his game and gain exposure to college scouts. He also began sending out scholarship applications to various universities, dreaming of playing tennis at the collegiate level. The first rejection letter arrived via email. Mark felt a familiar pang of disappointment as he read the polite but firm message: "Thank you for your interest. Highly competitive applicant pool. Unable to offer you a spot." He tried to shrug it off, telling himself that it was just one program, one school. But then came another rejection, and another, and another. Each email, each letter, chipped away at his confidence, rekindling the doubts he had worked so hard to overcome. "Maybe I'm not good enough," he muttered to himself one evening, staring at a pile of rejection letters. "Maybe all this training is for nothing." He started questioning his progress, wondering if he had truly improved as much as he thought he had. He replayed his practice matches in his head, focusing on his mistakes, his missed shots, his moments of hesitation. He confided in Mr. Thompson, who listened patiently and offered words of encouragement. "These programs and schools are looking for specific things, Mark. It doesn't mean you're not talented. It just means you might not be the right fit for them." But Mr. Thompson's words couldn't completely erase the sting of rejection. Mark felt like he was back at square one, his dream of playing college tennis slipping away. He even started to doubt his ability to beat David in the upcoming state tournament. The fear of another humiliating defeat crept back into his mind, threatening to derail his progress. One evening, he found Lily looking at his pile of rejection letters. "Don't worry, Mark," she said, her voice full of conviction. "I know you're going to be great. You just have to keep trying." Her unwavering belief in him, despite the setbacks, gave him a small spark of hope. He realized that he couldn't let the rejections define him. He had to keep pushing forward, to keep working hard, to keep believing in himself. He decided to change his approach. He started focusing on smaller, local tournaments, aiming to gain more experience and build his confidence. He also started reaching out to smaller colleges, schools that might be a better fit for his skills and academic interests. The rejections still stung, but they no longer had the same power over him. He had learned to accept them as part of the process, as temporary setbacks on the road to achieving his goals. He was determined to prove everyone wrong, to show them that he had what it takes to succeed, despite the obstacles in his path. The doubt was still there, lurking in the shadows, but it was no longer in control. He was. Mark realized that simply training harder wasn't enough. He needed to outsmart his opponents, especially David. He and Mr. Thompson spent hours analyzing videos of professional tennis players, studying different playing styles and strategies. They identified a weakness in David's game, his difficulty handling drop shots. David likes to stay on the baseline, Mr. Thompson explained. He's comfortable hitting powerful ground strokes from there. But he struggles when he has to come to the net and deal with short, angled shots. Mark and Mr. Thompson devised a new strategy, incorporating more drop shots into his game. It was a risky move, as drop shots required precision and finesse, but Mark was determined to master the technique. He spent countless hours practicing drop shots, focusing on the angle of his racket, the amount of spin he imparted on the ball, and the placement of the shot. He learned to disguise his intentions, making it difficult for his opponents to anticipate the drop shot. He also worked on his net game, improving his volleys and overheads. He knew that if he could lure his opponents to the net with drop shots, he needed to be prepared to finish the point with aggressive volleys. But the biggest change wasn't just technical, it was mental. Mark learned to be more patient, more strategic, and more adaptable. He stopped trying to overpower his opponents with brute force and started using his brain to outmaneuver them. He visualized different scenarios, imagining himself executing drop shots perfectly, hitting winning volleys, and dictating the pace of the match. He learned to stay calm under pressure, to make smart decisions, and to trust his instincts. He also started incorporating a new serving technique, adding a slice serve to his repertoire. The slice serve allowed him to create more spin on the ball, making it more difficult for his opponents to return. It also gave him more control over the placement of his serve, allowing him to exploit their weaknesses. The new strategy wasn't an instant success. It took time to implement and refine. He lost some matches while experimenting with the drop shots and slice serves. But he learned from his mistakes, adjusted his approach, and gradually improved. He realized that tennis wasn't just about hitting the ball hard, it was about thinking strategically, adapting to your opponent, and playing with intelligence. He was no longer just a power hitter, he was a chess player on the tennis court. The change in strategy gave him a renewed sense of confidence and purpose. He was ready to put his new skills and techniques to the test. True to his plan, Mark started entering smaller, local tournaments. These weren't the prestigious events he had initially aimed for, but they provided a valuable opportunity to test his new skills and build his confidence. At first, he was nervous. The memory of his defeat in the state finals still lingered, and he worried about choking again. But as he started winning matches, his confidence grew. He found that his new strategy was effective, allowing him to outsmart his opponents and dictate the pace of the game. He won his first tournament in months, a small local event with only a handful of competitors. The victory wasn't glamorous, but it felt significant. It was proof that his hard work was paying off, that he was capable of winning again. He continued to enter smaller tournaments, racking up more victories. He beat opponents he had struggled with in the past, showcasing his improved skills and strategic thinking. Each win fueled his confidence, pushing him closer to his goal of redemption. He started to enjoy playing tennis again. The pressure he had felt before seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of excitement and purpose. He was no longer just trying to avoid defeat, he was playing to win. He even started to have fun, experimenting with different shots, taking risks, and enjoying the challenge of competition. He rediscovered his love for the game, the joy of hitting a perfect shot, the thrill of winning a tough point. His success in the smaller tournaments didn't go unnoticed. Local newspapers started writing about his comeback, highlighting his improved skills and his unwavering determination. College scouts started taking notice, attending his matches and expressing interest in his potential. The rejections he had faced earlier in the year still stung, but they no longer defined him. He had proven to himself that he was capable of succeeding, despite the setbacks and obstacles in his path. His winning streak gave him the confidence to set his sights on bigger goals. He decided to enter the state tournament again, determined to prove that he was a different player than the one who had been humiliated the previous year. He knew that the road to redemption wouldn't be easy. He would face tough opponents, intense pressure, and the lingering memory of his defeat. But he was ready. He had trained hard, he had developed a winning strategy, and he had rediscovered his love for the game. He was ready to face his fears and chase his dreams. The smaller victories had paved the way for a bigger comeback. He was determined to make it happen. The day the state tournament bracket was released, Mark felt a surge of nervous energy. He scanned the names, searching for familiar faces, potential opponents. He navigated the digital document until his eyes landed on one name that made his stomach clench: David Reynolds. David was in the tournament. The realization hit Mark like a cold shower. All the progress he had made, all the confidence he had gained, suddenly felt fragile. The memory of last year's humiliating defeat resurfaced, vivid and painful. He closed his laptop, his hands trembling. He hadn't expected to face David again so soon. He had hoped to avoid him, to prove himself against other opponents before confronting the player who had caused him so much pain. He walked to the tennis court, his mind racing. He started hitting balls, trying to focus on his technique, but his thoughts kept drifting back to David. He imagined David watching him, studying his game, preparing to exploit his weaknesses. He confided in Mr. Thompson, who listened patiently and offered words of encouragement. "This is an opportunity, Mark," Mr. Thompson said. "A chance to prove how much you've grown, how much you've improved." But Mark wasn't convinced. He still felt the weight of last year's defeat, the fear of choking again. He knew that David was a formidable opponent, a talented player who wouldn't be easy to beat. He started watching videos of David's recent matches, analyzing his game, searching for any weaknesses he could exploit. He noticed that David had also improved, becoming more aggressive and consistent. The prospect of facing David again filled Mark with a mixture of dread and determination. He knew that he had to overcome his fear, to face his rival head-on, to prove to himself and everyone else that he was capable of winning. He started visualizing the match, imagining himself playing against David, executing his drop shots perfectly, hitting winning volleys, and dictating the pace of the game. He practiced his mental toughness, preparing himself for the pressure and the intensity of the competition. He knew that the match against David would be a test of his skills, his strategy, and his mental fortitude. He was determined to be ready, to leave no stone unturned in his preparation. He realized that this wasn't just about winning a tennis match, it was about overcoming his fears, facing his demons, and proving to himself that he was capable of achieving his goals, despite the obstacles in his path. The return of his rival had raised the stakes, but it had also ignited a fire within him, a burning desire to prove himself worthy of redemption. The challenge was set. He would be ready. Mark knew that his physical and strategic preparation wouldn't be enough to defeat David. He needed to be mentally strong, to be able to handle the pressure and the intensity of the rematch. He started working with a sports psychologist, Dr. Lee, who helped him develop mental toughness and visualization techniques. Dr. Lee taught Mark how to control his thoughts and emotions, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to focus on the present moment. She helped him identify his negative thought patterns and replace them with positive affirmations. "You are a skilled player, Mark," Dr. Lee would say. "You are prepared. You are confident. You are in control." Mark started practicing visualization techniques, imagining himself playing against David, executing his shots perfectly, and winning the match. He visualized every detail, from the feel of the racket in his hand to the sound of the ball hitting the strings. He also learned how to manage his anxiety and fear. Dr. Lee taught him breathing exercises and relaxation techniques that he could use to calm his nerves before and during the match. He started to see the court as a stage, and himself as the lead actor, fully in control of his performance. The fear began to subside. He practiced mindfulness, focusing on his breath, his body, and his surroundings. He learned to let go of his worries and anxieties, to embrace the present moment, and to trust his instincts. He created a pre-match routine that helped him get into the right mental state. He would listen to music, visualize his success, and repeat his positive affirmations. He also focused on his self-talk, replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to choke," he would think, "I am confident and capable." He knew that mental toughness was just as important as physical skill. He had to believe in himself, to trust his abilities, and to stay focused on his goals, even when faced with adversity. He visualized David's strengths and weaknesses, creating a mental map of how to exploit them. He prepared for every possible scenario, anticipating David's moves and planning his responses. He started to see the rematch as an opportunity, a chance to prove how much he had grown, how much he had overcome. He was no longer afraid of David, he was determined to beat him. He approached the tournament with a new mindset, a sense of confidence and purpose. He was ready to face his fears, to embrace the challenge, and to fight for his dreams. The mental preparation had transformed him from a nervous, insecure player into a confident, resilient competitor. He was ready for the rematch. He was ready for redemption. The atmosphere at the state finals was electric. The stands were packed with spectators, the air buzzing with anticipation. Mark walked onto the court, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to focus on his breathing, using the techniques Dr. Lee had taught him. He looked across the net at David. David smirked, a hint of arrogance in his eyes. Mark refused to be intimidated. He met David's gaze, a steely determination in his own. The referee announced the match, and the crowd erupted in applause. Mark bounced the ball a few times, preparing to serve. He took a deep breath, visualized his success, and tossed the ball into the air. His first serve was a slice, curving away from David's forehand. David lunged for the ball, but his return sailed long. 15-0, Mark felt a surge of confidence. He was in control. He continued to serve aggressively, mixing up his slice serves with powerful flat serves. He won the first game, holding serve comfortably. David stepped up to the baseline to serve. His serves were powerful, but Mark was ready. He anticipated David's moves, returning his serves with precision and aggression. The points were long and intense, each player battling for control. Mark executed his drop shots perfectly, luring David to the net and then finishing the point with a sharp volley. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, cheering for every point. Mark could feel the pressure, but he refused to let it get to him. He focused on his breathing, stayed calm, and played his game. The score remained close, each player holding serve. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Mark knew that the first set would be crucial, setting the tone for the rest of the match. As the set progressed, Mark started to notice a change in David's demeanor. David was becoming frustrated, making more errors, and losing his composure. Mark sensed an opportunity and seized it. He broke David's serve, taking a 5-4 lead. He was one game away from winning the first set. He stepped up to the baseline to serve, his heart pounding in his chest. He took a deep breath, visualized his success, and tossed the ball into the air. This was it. This was his chance to take control of the match, to prove how much he had grown, to show David that he was a different player than the one he had faced last year. The crowd was silent, waiting with bated breath. The championship match was underway. It was tense. It was important. And Mark was ready. Serving for the set at 5-4, Mark felt the weight of the moment crashing down on him. His first serve landed long. 0-15, he bounced the ball nervously, trying to regain his composure. The crowd was silent, the tension palpable. His second serve was a double fault. 0-30. A wave of panic washed over him. He could feel the memory of last year's defeat creeping into his mind. He saw images of missed shots, double faults, and David's triumphant grin. He tried to shake it off, to focus on the present moment, but the negative thoughts kept swirling in his head. He missed another shot, sending the ball wide. 0-40, 3 break points for David. He could feel his confidence crumbling. He was choking again. He saw Mr. Thompson in the stands, his face etched with concern. He saw his parents, their eyes filled with anxiety. He didn't want to let them down. He took a deep breath, trying to remember the techniques Dr. Lee had taught him. He closed his eyes for a moment, visualizing his success, repeating his positive affirmations. He stepped back to the baseline, determined to fight. He hit a powerful serve, forcing David to return the ball defensively. He approached the net, hitting a sharp volley to win the point. 15-40, he won the next point with a well-placed drop shot, catching David off guard. 30-40, he was starting to regain his momentum. But then, disaster struck. He hit another double fault, handing David the break point. 30-40, break point. He could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of the entire year resting on this one point. He bounced the ball nervously, his hand trembling. He tossed the ball into the air, but his timing was off. He swung at the ball, but he missed it completely. Another double fault. David had broken his serve, tying the set at 5-5. Mark felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had been so close to winning the set, to taking control of the match. But now, he had let it slip away. The flashbacks of last year were overwhelming. He was losing it. He walked back to his bench, his head down, his shoulders slumped. He could hear the whispers from the crowd, the murmurs of disappointment. He felt like a failure. He sat down on the bench, trying to regain his composure. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to focus on the present moment. He couldn't let the setbacks define him. He had to keep fighting, to keep believing in himself. The battle was far from over. Despite all of his preparation, old ghosts were haunting him. Sitting on the bench, feeling the weight of disappointment threatening to crush him, Mark closed his eyes. He took a series of deep breaths, focusing on the rhythm of his inhalations and exhalations. He tried to clear his mind of the negative thoughts, to let go of the anxiety and fear. He remembered Mr. Thompson's words, "You've got more grit than anyone I know." He remembered his dad's encouragement, "Use this as fuel, Mark." He remembered Lily's unwavering faith, "You're still the best tennis player ever." He pictured himself practicing his drop shots, hitting winning volleys, and dictating the pace of the game. He remembered the hours of hard work he had put in, the sacrifices he had made, the progress he had achieved. He thought about Dr. Lee's teachings, the visualization techniques, the positive affirmations, the mindfulness exercises. He realized that he couldn't let one bad game derail his entire year of preparation. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on Mr. Thompson in the stands. Mr. Thompson gave him a nod of encouragement, a silent message of support. Mark took a deep breath and nodded back, a sign that he was ready to fight. He stood up, walked back onto the court, and faced David. He met David's gaze, a renewed determination in his own. He was no longer afraid. He was focused. He was ready to battle. He remembered that tennis was a game of momentum, of ebbs and flows. He couldn't let one setback define him. He had to stay positive, to stay aggressive, and to keep fighting for every point. He focused on the present moment, on the next point, on the next shot. He let go of his worries about the past and his anxieties about the future. He was here, now, ready to play. David stepped up to serve, his face etched with confidence. Mark knew that he had to break David's serve to regain the momentum. He had to be aggressive, to anticipate David's moves, and to exploit his weaknesses. He returned David's serve with a powerful forehand, forcing David to scramble. He followed up with a well-placed drop shot, catching David off guard. He won the point. He continued to play aggressively, dictating the pace of the game and forcing David to make errors. He broke David's serve, taking a 6-5 lead. He walked back to his bench, feeling a surge of confidence. He had regained his focus, his composure, and his momentum. He was back in control. He would not let the pressure get to him again. He remembered why he loved the game and how hard he worked. This was it. The culmination of everything. He knew the set was not yet won, but he had taken a crucial step towards victory. He was ready to serve for the set again, determined to close it out this time. The support of his coach, family, and all of his training had brought him back from the brink. He was focused. He was ready. He was going to win. Serving for the set at 6-5, Mark felt a surge of confidence. He bounced the ball, visualizing his success. He was back in control. He was ready to close out the set. He hit a slice serve, curving away from David's forehand. David lunged for the ball, but his return landed in the net. 15-0. He followed up with a powerful flat serve, catching David off guard. David managed to return the ball, but it was a weak shot, landing short in the court. Mark approached the net, hitting a sharp volley to win the point. 30-0, he was 2 points away from winning the first set. The crowd was on its feet, cheering for every point. Mark could feel the energy, the excitement, the anticipation. He hit another slice serve, forcing David to return the ball defensively. Mark anticipated David's move, hitting a well-placed drop shot, catching David off guard. David scrambled to reach the ball, but he couldn't get there in time. 40-0, 3 set points. He could feel the momentum shifting in his favor. He was dictating the pace of the game, forcing David to play on his terms. His new skills and strategy were working perfectly. He took a deep breath, visualizing his success. He was 1 point away from winning the first set, from taking a crucial step towards redemption. He tossed the ball into the air, his timing perfect. He swung at the ball, hitting a powerful flat serve, right down the middle. David lunged for the ball, but he missed it completely. Ace. Mark had won the first set, 7-5. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering his name. He pumped his fist in the air, feeling a surge of exhilaration. He had turned the tide. He was gaining momentum. He walked back to his bench, feeling a sense of accomplishment. He had overcome his fears, he had regained his focus, and he had taken control of the match. He knew that the battle was far from over. David would not give up easily. He would fight back, he would try to regain the momentum. But Mark was ready. He was prepared for whatever David threw at him. He had proven to himself that he was a different player than the one who had been humiliated last year. He had transformed his game, his mindset, his entire approach to tennis. He was no longer just trying to avoid defeat, he was playing to win. He was no longer afraid of David, he was determined to beat him. He sat down on the bench, took a deep breath, and focused on the present moment. He was ready for the second set. He was ready to continue his fight for redemption. The tide had turned, and Mark was riding the wave. Mark continued to dominate in the second set, using his new skills and strategy to keep David off balance. He broke David's serve twice, taking a commanding 5-2 lead. He was 1 game away from victory, from redemption. Serving at 5-2, Mark felt the weight of the moment crashing down on him. He knew that this was it, the final opportunity to prove himself, to erase the memory of last year's defeat. He hit a slice serve, curving away from David's forehand. David lunged for the ball, but his return landed in the net. 15-0, he followed up with a powerful flat serve, catching David off guard. David managed to return the ball, but it was a weak shot, landing short in the court. Mark approached the net, hitting a sharp volley to win the point. 30-0, he was 2 points away from victory. The crowd was on its feet, cheering his name. He could feel the energy, the excitement, the anticipation. He hit another slice serve, forcing David to return the ball defensively. Mark anticipated David's move, hitting a well-placed drop shot, catching David off guard. David scrambled to reach the ball, but he couldn't get there in time. 40-0, 3 match points. He closed his eyes for a moment, visualizing his success. He remembered all the hard work, the sacrifices, the setbacks, and the triumphs that had led him to this moment. He was ready. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on David. He could see the frustration, the desperation, the defeat in David's eyes. He knew that he had broken David's spirit. He took a deep breath, tossed the ball into the air, and swung at it with all his might. He hit a powerful flat serve, right down the middle. David lunged for the ball, but he missed it completely. Ace. The crowd erupted in a deafening roar, cheering his name, applauding his victory. Mark had won the match, 7-5, 6-2. He had defeated David. He had achieved redemption. He dropped his racket, raised his arms in the air, and soaked in the adulation. He had done it. He had overcome his fears, he had achieved his goals, and he had proven to himself that he was capable of anything he set his mind to. He walked to the net, shook hands with David, and thanked him for the match. He could see the disappointment in David's eyes, but he also saw a hint of respect. He turned to the crowd, acknowledging their cheers, expressing his gratitude for their support. He saw Mr. Thompson in the stands, his face beaming with pride. He saw his parents, their eyes filled with tears of joy. He had made them proud. He walked off the court, feeling a sense of accomplishment, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of redemption. He had come back stronger than ever, and he had achieved his dreams. It was over. He had done it. Match point. And he won. The victory ceremony was a blur of flashing lights, cheering crowds, and congratulatory handshakes. Mark stood on the podium, the state championship trophy gleaming in his hands. He had done it. He had won. He looked out at the crowd, searching for his family and friends. He saw Mr. Thompson, beaming with pride, giving him a thumbs up. He saw his parents, their eyes filled with tears of joy, waving and cheering his name. He saw Lily, jumping up and down, holding a sign that read, "Mark is the best." He smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude and love. He couldn't have done it without them. They had supported him, encouraged him, and believed in him, even when he had doubted himself. He accepted the trophy from the tournament director, thanking him for the opportunity to compete. He raised the trophy above his head, a symbol of his hard work, his perseverance, and his triumph over adversity. The crowd roared its approval, chanting his name, celebrating his victory. He felt a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of fulfillment. He had achieved his dream. He gave a short speech, thanking his coach, his family, his friends, and his fans for their support. He dedicated the victory to everyone who had believed in him, who had encouraged him, who had helped him along the way. He emphasized the importance of hard work, perseverance, and believing in yourself, even when faced with setbacks and challenges. He told the crowd that anything is possible if you set your mind to it. He stepped down from the podium, surrounded by well-wishers, congratulating him on his victory. He shook hands, signed autographs, and posed for pictures. He was a champion. He walked over to his family, embracing them tightly, expressing his gratitude for their love and support. He thanked Mr. Thompson for his guidance and mentorship, for helping him transform his game and his mindset. He spent the rest of the day celebrating with his family and friends, reveling in his victory, enjoying the moment. He had worked so hard for this, and he deserved to savor every second of it. He knew that this was just the beginning. He had achieved one of his goals, but he had many more to pursue. He was determined to continue working hard, to continue improving, and to continue chasing his dreams. He had proven to himself that he was capable of anything he set his mind to. He had come back stronger than ever, and he had achieved victory. He was a champion. Mark had won the championship. The taste of victory was sweet. He would never forget it. As Mark was leaving the court, still basking in the glow of his victory, a man in a suit approached him. He introduced himself as Mr. Davies, a tennis scout from Crestwood University. "Mark," Mr. Davies said, extending his hand. "That was an incredible performance. I've been watching you all tournament, and I'm very impressed with your skills, your strategy, and your mental toughness." Mark shook his hand, feeling a surge of excitement. He had dreamed of playing college tennis for years, and now, it seemed like his dream was about to come true. "I'd like to offer you a full athletic scholarship to Crestwood University," Mr. Davies said. "We believe you have the potential to be a great player at the collegiate level, and we'd love to have you on our team." Mark was speechless. He had faced so many rejections earlier in the year, and now, he was being offered a full scholarship to a prestigious university. It was a dream come true. He looked over at his parents, their faces beaming with pride. He knew that they had always wanted him to go to college, and now, he had the opportunity to pursue his education and his passion for tennis at the same time. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," Mark said, his voice trembling with emotion. "This is an incredible opportunity. I'd love to accept your offer." Mr. Davies smiled. "Great. I'm confident that you'll be a valuable asset to our team. We'll be in touch with you soon to discuss the details of the scholarship." Mark shook his hand again, feeling a sense of gratitude and excitement. He had not only achieved redemption, he had also secured his future. He walked over to his parents, sharing the good news with them. They were overjoyed, hugging him tightly, expressing their pride and support. "We always knew you could do it, Mark," his mom said, tears streaming down her face. "We're so proud of you." "This is amazing, Mark," his dad said, patting him on the back. "You've worked so hard for this, and you deserve it." He looked over at Lily, who was jumping up and down, clapping her hands. "I knew you were the best, Mark," she exclaimed. Mark smiled, feeling a sense of love and gratitude. He had come a long way since last year's humiliating defeat. He had overcome his fears, he had achieved his goals, and he had secured his future. He was a champion, both on and off the court. The scholarship offer was the perfect ending to his incredible comeback story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a new challenge, a new adventure. He was ready. The celebration started on the court and continued long into the night. Mark's family, friends, and coach gathered at his house for a celebratory barbecue. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of grilled food. Mr. Thompson gave a heartfelt toast, praising Mark's hard work, his dedication, and his unwavering spirit. He said that Mark was an inspiration to everyone who knew him, and that he was confident that Mark would achieve great things in the future. Mark's parents shared stories about his childhood, reminiscing about his early days on the tennis court, his struggles, his triumphs, and his unwavering passion for the game. Lily showed off her "Mark is the best" sign, proudly declaring that her brother was a champion. She even challenged him to a game of tennis, promising to beat him one day. Mark's friends teased him about his newfound fame, joking that he was now a celebrity. They reminisced about their shared experiences, their inside jokes, and their unwavering support for each other. Mark spent the evening mingling with his loved ones, expressing his gratitude for their presence in his life. He realized that his victory was not just his own, it was a victory for everyone who had believed in him, who had encouraged him, who had helped him along the way. He ate grilled burgers, hot dogs, and corn on the cob, savoring the taste of victory. He drank lemonade, toasted his success, and laughed with his friends. As the night wore on, the celebration continued. They played music, danced, and sang songs. They shared stories, reminisced about the past, and looked forward to the future. Mark felt a sense of peace, a sense of contentment, a sense of fulfillment. He had achieved his goals, he had secured his future, and he was surrounded by the people he loved. He realized that the journey was just as important as the destination. He had learned so much about himself, about tennis, and about life. He had grown as a person, he had become more resilient, and he had discovered his true potential. As the celebration drew to a close, Mark gathered his family and friends around him. He thanked them for their love, their support, and their unwavering belief in him. He told them that he was grateful for their presence in his life, and that he would never forget this night. He looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of gratitude and wonder. He knew that the future was uncertain, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had come back stronger than ever, and he was ready to chase his dreams. The celebration was a perfect ending to his incredible comeback story. It was a testament to his hard work, his perseverance, and his unwavering spirit. He was a champion, both on and off the court. He would cherish these moments forever. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Mark sat alone on his back porch, gazing up at the stars. He reflected on his journey, the highs and lows, the challenges and the triumphs. He thought about last year's humiliating defeat, the pain, the disappointment, the self-doubt. He realized that it was the lowest point of his life, but it was also the turning point. It had forced him to confront his weaknesses, to push himself harder, and to transform his game. He thought about the rejections he had faced, the doubts he had harbored, the moments when he had almost given up. He realized that perseverance was key, that success is not always linear, and that setbacks are inevitable. He thought about the support he had received from his coach, his family, his friends, and his sports psychologist. He realized that he couldn't have done it alone, that their love, encouragement, and belief in him had been essential to his success. He thought about the new skills he had learned, the new strategies he had developed, and the new mindset he had cultivated. He realized that tennis was more than just a game, it was a metaphor for life. It taught him the importance of hard work,